Most people want to know which coin is going to 10x next month, but the smarter question, the one that actually makes people wealthy, is this: which technology is the financial system going to be built on? Those are two completely different questions, and almost nobody is asking the second one. My name is Allie, and today we're going to talk about something that sounds almost deliberately unsexy. We're going to talk about plumbing. Stay with me here. In 1994, almost nobody cared about TCP or IP. It wasn't trending. Nobody was posting about packet switching protocols on the news. But TCP or IP became the invisible backbone of the entire internet. Every email you've ever sent, every video you've ever streamed, every dollar you've ever spent online, it all ran through that infrastructure. Silently, invisibly, profitably. That's the category of asset that changes lives. Not the loudest one, not the most hyped one, the one that becomes necessary. And right now in 2025, we are watching that exact story begin to replay inside the global financial system. Let me give you some real context first, because if you're going to understand what's happening with XRP and Ripple right now, you need to understand the world they're operating in, the global cross-border payments. Market processes somewhere in the range of $150 trillion annually. Let that number sit for a second, $150 trillion, and the infrastructure moving most of that money. It's old. It's slow. SWIFT, the dominant messaging network, was founded in 1973. Your grandfather's bank technology is still running international finance. When a business in Brazil needs to pay a supplier in Vietnam, that transaction can take 3 to 5 days, lose value in currency conversion fees, touch 5 or 6 intermediary banks, and cost a percentage of the total amount every single time. That's not a feature, that's a wound, and it's been bleeding money out of the global economy for decades. Now here's where Ripple enters the picture, and here's where I want to challenge the way most people think about this company. Ripple is not a crypto startup trying to disrupt banks. That framing is wrong, and it leads people to completely misread the opportunity. Ripple is a financial infrastructure company that uses crypto as its rails. That's a fundamental distinction. Because crypto startups fight the system, infrastructure companies become the system, and becoming the system is where the real lasting generational value gets created. Look at Visa. Visa doesn't compete with your bank. Visa connects your bank to everyone else's bank, and it takes a small cut of every transaction that flows through it. That's the model. That's the playbook. And Ripple, through XRP as a bridge asset, is attempting to do something structurally similar but for cross-border settlement in real time at a fraction of the cost. Now let's get into what's actually happening right now, because the timing of this moment is not accidental. For years, Ripple was in legal limbo. The SEC lawsuit cast a shadow over everything. Institutions couldn't touch it. Banks couldn't mention it publicly. It became radioactive even as the underlying technology kept improving, kept signing partners, kept running transactions. Think about what that means. 3 years of suppressed momentum. 3 years of technology continuing to mature while sentiment was artificially frozen, and then the legal fog begins to clear. The XRP ruling, partial as it was, established something critical. XRP itself, traded on exchanges, is not a security. That's not nothing. That's a legal landmark, because it means there's now a pathway, an actual court-backed pathway for institutions to hold and transact in XRP without immediately triggering securities law liability. That changes the calculus completely. Here's an analogy I want you to think about. Imagine a massive dam holding back an enormous reservoir. For years, you could see the water building up behind it, the institutional interest, the capital, the infrastructure plans. But the dam held. Regulation, legal uncertainty, compliance fears, all of it kept the water back. What's happening right now is not the dam breaking. It's the first cracks appearing. And engineers know, once water finds a path, it doesn't stop. The Clarity Act, whatever form it takes when it's finalized, is not a policy preference. It's a pressure valve. It's the moment institutions get the legal framework they've been waiting for to finally allocate in size, and in size in institutional language means numbers that dwarf anything the retail crypto market has ever seen. We're not talking about a hedge fund buying $50 million in XRP. We're talking about global banks integrating XRP-based settlement into their existing payment corridors. We're talking about treasury departments holding XRP as a liquidity buffer for cross-border operations. We're talking about a completely different order of magnitude. But, and this is important, this isn't guaranteed. And I won't pretend it is. There are real risks here that don't get discussed enough. First, regulation, even when it comes, may not be designed well. There's a very real possibility that the Clarity Act, or whatever emerges, gets captured by incumbent financial interests and ends up creating moats for existing players while limiting innovation at the edges. That would be bad not just for crypto but for the whole point of what blockchain was supposed to do. Second, technology risk is real. XRP's utility depends on adoption by financial institutions, and financial institutions move slowly. every integration requires internal compliance review, IT infrastructure overhaul, and executive approval chains that can take years. The timeline here is not a quarter, it's not even a year. We're talking about a multi-year infrastructure build, and execution risk exists at every step. Third, competition is fierce. Stellar, which shares some technical DNA with XRP, is competing in the same space. Central bank digital currencies are coming, and some of them could, in theory, disintermediate private bridge assets entirely. The field is not clear. So why does XRP still represent a compelling case given those risks? 3 words. First mover infrastructure advantage. Ripple has already signed partnerships with financial institutions across over 50 countries. These are not pilot programs sitting in a lab somewhere. These are live corridors, money actually moving. That's a network effect that is extraordinarily difficult to replicate from scratch, and unlike Bitcoin, which positions itself as digital gold, a store of value designed to sit still, XRP is designed to move. Its value proposition is velocity. It settles in 3 to 5 seconds. Transaction costs are fractions of a cent. It can absorb massive volume without degrading. Those are infrastructure-grade specs. When institutions are building payment systems, they're not looking for philosophy. They're looking for specs, and XRP specs are purpose-built for exactly the use case that the global financial system desperately needs solved. Here's the shift in thinking I want to leave you with. Most retail investors look at the crypto market and see a scoreboard. Red days, green days, price up, price down, which coin is winning this week? But the investors who are going to look back at 2025 and 2026 as defining moments in their financial lives are the ones who stopped watching the scoreboard and started watching the construction site. Right now, behind the volatility, behind the noise, behind the Twitter arguments and the YouTube thumbnails, something structural is being built. The rails of a new financial system are being laid, quietly, methodically, mostly out of view. And the question isn't whether that system gets built. It will. Financial gravity demands it. $150 trillion in annual cross-border payments cannot continue running on 50-year-old infrastructure indefinitely. The question is, which technology ends up in the foundation? Because the foundation doesn't get replaced once it's set. TCP or IP wasn't replaced. SWIFT wasn't replaced. It was worked around. It was tolerated. It aged. And only now, decades later, is something finally positioned to unseat it. Ripple, flawed and imperfect as any company is, has done something that is genuinely rare in the technology industry. It has taken a crypto asset and made it boring enough for banks to consider using it. That's not an insult. That's the hardest thing in the world to do. The boring revolution is the one that actually wins. And if you understand that, really understand it, then what's happening right now with XRP and Ripple doesn't feel like hype. It feels like the quiet before the infrastructure age of crypto truly begins. I'm not telling you what to buy. I'm telling you what to understand, because in markets, understanding always comes before opportunity. If this gave you a different way of thinking about crypto, drop a comment and tell me what you think. Subscribe if you want more breakdowns like this. No noise, no hype, just the structural picture. I'll see you in the next one.